Hello, and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. I am super excited this week to have a guest, Meaghan Beames, on to talk about parent-baby regulation. And if you know my work, you know I talk about regulation a lot. So I was super excited when I was on Meaghan's podcast earlier in the year at some point. I was trying to remember when I was on your podcast. And my brain this year was like,
March. It was it was quite a while ago.
I was like, spring, summer, I don't know. This whole year is like one big black hole to me. But we started talking about this piece of regulation and parent-baby nervous systems and got really excited about this topic. So Meaghan, thank you so much for joining for this conversation.
Thank you. It's so nice to be on this show. I really appreciate you having me here.
Yeah. So why don't we start off with you telling folks a little bit about your work and sort of where you're coming at this conversation from, and then we'll jump right in.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm Meaghan Beames. I am a registered massage therapist in Canada. I'm also a craniosacral therapist, a rhythmic movement therapist, and a visceral manipulation therapist. And I do all of these things on babies and children and adults alike. And I also teach. So I the power of all of these things to help babies and families to thrive is incredible. I see it all the time in my own work, but also in the work that my students are doing around the world. And I I just want to spread more and more information about it because we can help even just, one or two babies, or we can help many, many, many babies. My goal is to indirectly treat 1 million babies using craniosacral therapy. And we're heading in that direction, which is pretty cool.
I love that, the indirect, right? You teach others so
Yeah,
they can get their hands on
exactly.
all those babies and help them.
That's it.
I love it. I love it. So let's start off with a little bit about maybe nervous system communication, because I feel like that's what sparked this conversation idea, right? Was
Mm.
us talking about the nerdiness of sort of loving co-regulation and looking at parent-baby nervous systems as a dyad, right? As part of a system, as opposed to
Yes.
separate entities that we can just focus on the baby's nervous system or just focus on the parent's nervous system. So let's start there. And then I've jotted down some other topics that we're going to definitely dive into.
Yeah, beautiful. So the just like you were saying, the fact that a lot of people see babies as separate beings from their parent, babies don't even know that they are separate until many weeks after birth. Like 6 weeks after birth, do they realize that they're a separate being? And in that way, we need to understand that it is literally one nervous system that we are working with. So the polyvagal theory is very popular right now and for very due cause. And that's because we're learning about humans and how humans, their emotions are regulated, their nervous system is regulated or dysregulated. And when it comes to infants, they are so immature, not to be mean to them, but their nervous system is so immature that they must be regulated by their parent, usually by the person that they feel most safe with. So not just their primary parent. Perhaps the primary parent is the person they feel safest with, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the secondary parent. But what is truly important is making sure that the person who has the quote unquote mature nervous system is the one who is telling the baby you are safe, you are, um you're not in harm's way, like everything is fine. A baby won't be able to do that on their own, right? So this whole movement from the 1900s of self-soothing is a whole bunch of BS, really.
Yes.
It's not a thing. It's not real. It's and you know, that's just another way of separating out that infant from the parent. And US, it's another way of making sure that this parent can go back to work early. So I'm Canadian,
Yes.
right? We have a 12-month, if you're an employee and you're not self-employed, we have 12-month mat leave. And we can have up to 18 months. And this is paid mat leave, right? So we get we aren't rushed back to work. So we have a little bit more of this, it's okay to spend time with your infant.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the US culture, it's like, how soon can you get back to work? And how soon can we separate you from your baby
Yes, it is. It is.
and pretend like you don't have a baby?
Yeah, even my clients have the most generous leave. It's like 6 months,
Right.
and they feel so fortunate. And they are so fortunate in the
And they
US to have
are. They're
6 months.
incredibly
Like,
fortunate.
I didn't have 6 months with either of my babies. Well, one of them I was self-employed, so I mean, I made my own schedule and she was with me all the time, but still, like
Mm.
the other
Yes.
one I did was not self-employed. I was working for the federal government and I didn't have
Yeah.
paid parental leave.
And
But
even just the thought of going back to work is enough to dysregulate your nervous system, and your baby
yes.
will feel that.
Yes. I want to back up. Can you give
Yeah,
like a high level, not too technical definition of polyvagal theory for folks? Because
sure.
I first got introduced to this concept not in the baby world, actually in the neurodivergent, like neurodiversity,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
trauma world, just because of the folks that I follow. That's where I first started assimilating that information. And I know a lot of people may not have heard the term before.
Yeah, for sure. So polyvagal theory has to do with the vagus nerve. So vagal, vagus. The vagus nerve is a very long nerve. It's like it's an actual fiber. So some people are like, "Oh, nerves, they're just like little dots in your body." But it is a long string, like a thick cord that runs from your brain down your neck and into your internal organs. And so this nerve has two branches. So we've got the branch that helps you to activate, and then the branch that helps you to regulate, down regulate, and kind of be calm and allows your
Mhm.
digestive tract to work. So we've got the rest and digest. So people might be very familiar with this: rest and digest, fight or flight, and freeze. And then the next one is fawn. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, I always want to be in rest and digest," but that's not true. Fight or flight should also have activate on it. So it's like I'm standing up out of my chair. You are getting into what's called your sympathetic nervous system. So you're activating. You've got to go pick up your kids from school. You're now in your sympathetic nervous system.
Mhm.
You're driving, you're in your sympathetic because you have to be aware of what's going on around you. You sit down and you're relaxed, and now you're in your parasympathetic nervous system. So that's your rest and digest. So throughout the day, you go between sympathetic and parasympathetic, and you want to be able to regulate the two. If you cannot regulate the two, if you are stuck in that fight or flight or activate, then the things in rest and digest don't work because your body can't get into that rest and digest. So these people who are stuck in fight or flight or activate, they are often, let's put it in terms of babies or toddlers, they're often gassy and grunty. They're often wake very frequently. They could be constipated, or they
Mhm.
could go between constipation and diarrhea for some toddlers. They could cry very easily. So that startle reflex might happen very easily. Or when it comes to a toddler, I mean, toddlers are, they they're kind of a different topic, but because they've got a lot going on, like that limbic system is coming online.
Uh-huh.
But um, but they could be really fast to tantrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they're just throwing and they hit and so there's lots of different ways that we can tell that baby and or toddler or child are dysregulated.
Yeah.
And they physiologically, literally the way the human body works, they physiologically cannot regulate themselves on their own. It must come from their parent.
Yep.
It has to. Physiological reaction must come from the parent. Whether the parent feels regulated or not, it has to come from them.
Yeah, they're looking to the parent for those clues of
That's
like,
right.
am I safe? Is this safe? Are we safe? Are we good?
Am I
What's
loved?
yeah.
Is it okay for me to act this way? Will you still love
Yeah.
me?
Yes. Oh, especially in those messy moments. Whew.
Oh, absolutely. That's what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for, can I act this way and you will still love me?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Is
their
your love
safety.
conditional or unconditional?
That's right.
Yeah.
If I'm quiet, will you love me? Oh, because I'm quiet, you will love me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, right? So there's that's the self-soothing. You don't love me, I'm gonna have to do it myself because I don't feel like you love me. So when it comes to infants, in their first 6 months, they are learning self-worth. They are learning, am I worthy of your attention? Am I worthy of your love? This is
Mm-hmm.
why, I don't think maybe this is why, but pediatricians are like, oh, don't sleep train until they're at least 4 months. Before that, you really should probably be with us. But it's not like a switch turns off and now they feel safe and secure. They are learning. I think actually we as humans, we are learning what self-worth and worthiness of love our entire lives.
Yeah, I was about to say that, like, right, the foundation gets laid, and then we keep building on that throughout childhood and into adulthood, you know?
That's it.
Because
And
we are meant to be in community. We're meant to be looking towards our people to co-regulate even as adults, except that we are adults and we have, the brain development to self-regulate to a certain point that babies and toddlers don't have. They have not
yeah.
developed that capacity yet.
And one of humans' biggest fears is being left behind or abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
That's our biggest fear.
Yep.
And whenever we hear people saying like, well, I have abandonment issues. Okay, did your parents sleep train you? Were you told that when you cried, you weren't worthy of their love? You know? Or was
Yeah.
it fully 100% they told you that they didn't like you? So it's like you're absolutely right. The foundation is laid early in infancy, and then we need to be proved over and over again that we are worthy
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. And one of the things I find fascinating is just that like into the communication between nervous systems that we aren't really consciously aware of, like that
Mm,
check. And we do it as adults too. And like you could think about it, just like how the presence of another person can bring you calm,
yes.
without them really doing much of anything. Like I remember I was trying to get my oldest to camp when my daughter was like 1. And so when my son would have been like 6. And I stepped on one of those manhole covers and it wasn't bolted down correctly. And like it went down and my leg dropped up to the knee into this manhole and I fell and she
Oh
was
my
on my
gosh.
back and like scraped down the front of my shin. And I'm just like, like, WTF am I supposed to do here? Like, I was okay, but I was really rattled, right? Because it's like
No doubt.
really scary. And it's like about a block from my home, and one of my neighbors who didn't know me at all, but had seen me around, comes like running across the street, and she was like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Like, do you want me to take your toddler?" But she didn't like other people at that point, so she was like, would not have
Uh-huh.
gone to anybody. And I'm like, "No," and she just like sat with me, like while I collected myself. And then like when I was a bit calmer, she said, let me wipe up your legs. Just look at the scrape, right? I'm like, okay, thank you. And like she didn't do a lot, but she mostly sat with me. So I was not one adult alone with a melting down toddler and a freaked out 6-year-old by myself. And I'm just like, I don't know. For some reason, that was one of the incidents in my life that just sticks in when it's like, it's not what she did. It was just being there
Yeah. Not being alone in it.
and being calm was
Yeah.
like helped my nervous system, down regulate.
That's it.
And something that was scary, but ultimately was not that big of a deal. Like I wasn't
Right.
seriously hurt, like, but it was pretty scary. And like just that calm of having another nervous system that's regulated, like right there,
Mm-hmm.
like you're not alone. I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
It
And
makes
if
such
we
a
think
difference.
of instances, so if we put it in terms of, us as adults so that we can kind of get a perhaps a perspective of a child or toddler or baby, is that when we're having a really terrible day or we're having a really terrible month and we finally get to hang out with our best friend,
Hmm.
that immediate sense of like, oh, everything's fine.
Yep.
It's okay. They don't even have to say anything, just being with them. And you're like, oh, I can take on the world.
Hmm.
It's fine. I'll be fine.
Yep.
And like we can co-regulate with our best friends or people who make us feel safe. And to think of an infant or toddler or child, absolutely, they need that. They need it more
Yep.
than we do as adults.
Yep. And we do it for them.
And we do it for them.
Yeah, that's our job.
Yeah. Whether we like
Yeah.
it or not.
I know. Yes.
That is in our job description. And it's whether we like it or not. You don't have to like your job. You just have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're gonna do it whether you would do it intentionally or not. I think that's the thing. Is like you can your little one is gonna look to your nervous system and you for those safety or danger clues.
Yeah.
And so, they're gonna get them either way, right? And it's not about being perfect, right? You don't have to be like Zen all the time, but
Exactly.
like being
Sometimes it's literally
aware.
just being there.
Yeah, or like I had a therapist tell me once, and I share this with my clients sometimes. She's like, you don't have to be like, you don't have to go from being really stressed to totally calm. She's like, even that
Yeah.
10% more calm can pay
Yeah.
off, right?
Yeah.
Like just be calmer. Don't aim for calm. If you aim for calm when you're stressed, you're gonna just stress yourself out more, make yourself more anxious. So she's like,
That's
just work for
that's
a
it.
little bit better regulated, and that can pay off to
Yeah.
co-regulate your baby or your toddler or your child, and they're going to pick up on that shift.
Absolutely they will. And you will too in your
Uh-huh.
own body. Now, I say this as a person who had postpartum rage and postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. I know what it's like to be in that space and have absolutely no control over my reaction. It felt like I had no control over my own
Mm-hmm.
reactions, right? So I understand also that when we are living in a state of fight, flight, fear, it's incredibly difficult to get out of it ourselves. And the thing that happens when we are in that space is that we actually retreat from help. We retreat from people who are going to regulate ourselves. And it just
Mm-hmm.
spirals more and more out of control. So if I could go back 6 years ago, the advice I would have given myself was just call your friends, call them. Don't worry about being a burden. Don't
Mm-hmm.
worry about, your friends who are trying. I mean, most of my friends were trying to conceive and I had babies. So I felt really awful
Yeah.
calling them and saying being a parent sucks right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really feel like I had too many people to lean on. But in that moment, I wish that I had. I wish that or even told my mom a little bit more. She knew it already. She came and said, listen, you need to go to your doctor. You need to ask for help in this
Mhm.
situation because you are well past breathing techniques.
Yeah.
And when it comes to polyvagal theory, actually, breathing, when you inhale, you are in your sympathetic nervous system. And when you exhale, you are in your parasympathetic nervous system. That's why when they say when you're like stressing out and you're freaking out, breathe, right? Focus on your breath. Physiologically speaking, it will help you to get out of your fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
The longer your exhale, the longer you stay in that rest and digest. So inhale, you're in fight or flight. Exhale, you're in parasympathetic, you're in rest and digest. So one of the things that did help me when I was incredibly stressed was humming. But and I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it was helping me. I didn't know about polyvagal theory at the time, but I would pat my baby's bum like he would sleep on my chest, and I would pat his bum and I would hum. And I noticed that if I hummed one single note, if I hummed like, and I tried to sing to him like, I noticed that he wouldn't fall asleep. But if I hummed one single note, essentially, if I said Om
Mm-hmm.
and I said Om for the longest duration, he fell asleep in no time. And I felt calm. So, not knowing it at the time, I was actually activating my parasympathetic nervous system or my rest and digest nervous system.
Yeah.
And I give that as a technique for my clients as well.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Because it's when you're in it, when you're in the thick of it and you are freaking the F out. There are ways to downregulate. There really are. So that you can be that 10% better.
Yeah. And that's such a simple, right there. That's such a simple thing. It's
Yeah.
not like a big complicated breathing technique or anything like that, which,
No.
really can work for some people, but can be really daunting for others. And it's like regulate the parent, regulate the baby. The baby's better regulated, then the parent's easier to regulate themselves some more, and then the baby's better regulated, and we get a good spiral, right? As opposed to like the baby's amped up, that amps up, and parents amped up, and baby's like the dysregulation spiral that also can happen.
Yeah. Now, what I also want to say is that it's a chicken or the egg kind of situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because is the parent dysregulated because the baby's dysregulated? Or is the baby
Mm-hmm.
dysregulated because the parent is dysregulated?
Yep.
And that's where the body work comes into play because you and I've treated over 800 babies now. So that's 800 moms I have also had come through my door.
Mm-hmm.
And I have some of the chillest moms and their babies are screaming bloody Mary out there, right? Totally dysregulated, totally off the charts, colicky, screaming for hours a day. And the
Mm-hmm.
parent's like, I don't know what's going on. And I can tell that this parent is chill. They're not masking chill. They are
Mm-hmm.
chill.
Yep.
Okay. And so in that, you're like, well, if she's chill, why isn't the baby? And it's because the baby is dysregulated usually due to pain or birth
Mm-hmm.
trauma.
Mm-hmm.
They have their own memories from being born that are playing on repeat and keeping them in this fight or flight state. And that's where the body work comes into play. That's where the craniosacral therapy comes into play, where what we do is what I do and what I try to teach is first listen to the pregnancy. How was that pregnancy for them? Were there anything that happened in the pregnancy that maybe caused stress to the baby? And again,
Mm-hmm.
this is not blame or shame at all. This is like I just need to know the backstory so I
Yep.
can figure out what's going on with your baby. But what could have caused some stress for this baby or for the parent? And then I listened to the birth story. Okay, what was the baby's? So I listened to the birth story, which is the parent's birth story, really. But then I put into perspective what the baby's experience might have been.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll ask about symptoms. So with all of that information, I can usually find the areas of the body that are keeping this baby stuck, baby slash toddler stuck in fight or flight because of that pain. I don't think people really not understand, but have a belief system that babies feel pain.
I mean, it's not that far, we're not that far off of like the medical model, not even acknowledging that they feel pain, right? Like,
Exactly. Exactly.
but
Babies
also
feel
the,
being born.
yeah,
They do.
but also like, I don't think a lot of people have the space for understanding at this point, like how we store experiences, how we embody them in our
Mm-hmm.
bodies, right?
Yeah.
Trauma and things like that, like how our bodies hold on to emotions and things that are not processed out. I think that's still kind of out there in the like, oh, that's just woo
Woo
woo,
woo
whatever.
world.
And it's like, well, not actually.
No, it's stored in the fascia. So fascia,
Yeah.
yeah, fascia is everywhere and it is incredibly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
And someone explained it perfectly. If you can believe that the phone in your hand has memory, why can't you believe your body can store memory?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that a piece of metal can store memory, but human flesh cannot store memory? Why is that concept hard for some people? And for me, I was like, that's fascinating because I was still in the mindset of like, but how
Mm-hmm.
does it store memory? Well, listen, I don't know how it stores memory in the phone, and I don't need to.
Say, I don't know how electronics work, so they do. Like, I
I
don't
don't
get
need to
it.
know how. I just know that they do, and that's enough for me now. Yeah. But it's stored in the physical fascia. So I also, as a body worker for adults, I'll be working and I will be drawn to an area, let's say like their back or something like that. Like I feel like I should just go work there. And I'll start getting kind of visuals and I'll recently I had one where I was like, "Were you punched in the back before?" She's like, My brother used to punch me in the back." No. And I was like, no, I'm getting this feeling like you need to be punched from like the side or hit really, really hard from the side. And she was like, oh, I was T-boned. She was in a T-bone accident and she was hit really, really hard from the side. And I was like, well, there you have it. How would I
Interesting.
know that this memory, right? The body has this memory in in that area. I wouldn't know those things. And then I was working with a 16-year-old and I had his, I had one hand on his upper abdomen and one on his back. And his mom was in the session as well. And I was like, there's a lot of tension here. Did you fall off your bike? I don't know. I'm getting visions of you falling off your bike really hard and like the 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 handlebar jamming into your stomach. And the mom was like, that's exactly what happened. He fell off and the handlebar jammed into his stomach. Like it spun, like the tire spun so that the
Mm-hmm.
handlebar was sticking and it like like knocked the wind out of him. And I was like, so that is a memory stored in the body. And and it's an unprocessed memory until you access it in a way
Mm-hmm.
that it's ready to come forward, really say.
Bodies are fascinating. Like,
Fascinating.
it really is. Like sometimes I will um just have these families with these babies and it's just like they're just kind of a mess. Like I don't mean that in a value judgment kind of way, but like, nothing seems to be budging with the baby and I'm just like, can we just get you into a good body worker, right? Because like
Yeah.
eh, I recommend body work a lot with the families I do because I think there's a lot of times where it can be a helpful tool. or a helpful screening tool, right? Like,
Yeah,
is this something where we're holding tension that you're just not, a parent isn't able to pick up on, or, what else is going on here? I wish it was easier for folks to get access to them.
I know.
But it's like, it's sometimes I'm just like, I don't know, like your baby has such a keyed up nervous system, right? Like this is another tool we can bring in because there just is so much going on here that
Hmm.
isn't neatly fitting into something. It's like getting that the getting the skilled hands, right? To kind of like, what
Yeah.
are we noticing with those skilled body worker hands on this baby? And what are they able to observe and notice? I think can be such a valuable like tool. Obviously, there are like really straightforward reasons, but sometimes when it's just like we have such a highly sensitive nervous system, how can we help this nervous system regulate better? And some parents are like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. And some parents are like, okay, I'm not so sure about that, Kim.
And so, okay, so
But
here's the flip side of that. So there are parents who are like, I don't believe that. It's woo woo. I'll never believe that. Okay. Do you believe in tight muscles? Okay. Yes. Do you believe that when you get a massage, your tight muscles are looser? Yes.
mhm,
Do you know that the stomach is a muscle? Do you know that the stomach muscle can get very tight and it actually can pull down the esophagus, pull down the tongue, and keep your baby's mouth open? And now they're mouth breathing and now they wake frequently because they can't get a deep sleep.
yeah. Oh, that's a good way of explaining it. I love that
Ex-
because mouth breathing,
Yeah,
right? One of my red flags I screen
absolutely.
for.
Is mouth
And
breathing.
and a lot of times like we'll talk about like, hey, why? Do we have tethered oral tissues? Like do we have enlarged adenoids? I mean, for me, tethered oral tissues always should go hand in hand with body work. That's a given. Like whether that's something that needs to be revised or that body work alone, right, can resolve. But like we always do body work. That I'm firmly in that camp because it works better or can be enough on its own. But it's like these pieces, I'm like, yep, that's something I scream for. And like that, the
Yeah.
digestive issues, right? Like so many of these things are so sleep disruptive on their own, but it's like we got to figure out what's going on that's causing, like, why is your baby constipated all the time? Why
That's
are they
it.
having so much gas? Why are they mouth breathing?
Yep.
Because
And a lot
that's
of
the
times it's
answer, right?
tension.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how we find the answer is like why. We know that it is causing a problem with sleep, but we have to get underneath that.
Yeah. And so I use the word tension and some people are like, "Oh, tension, they're stressed out." And but that's not the way I use tension. Tension for me
Hmm.
is tightness.
Yep.
Yeah. So tightness in their abdomen, tightness in their intestines could wake them up frequently,
Hmm.
right? The intestines are also muscles.
Yep.
So if we go in and we massage those intestines and to help them to like loosen up, maybe this baby's not going to be gassy anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe this baby's going to be able to digest proteins better.
Hmm.
Maybe this baby isn't going to ferment the food in the milk in their intestines, which then creates more gas, and then they're super gassy and they wake frequently.
Hmm.
And that's just tightness in the abdomen, throwing this baby's nervous system off. And guess what? That nervous system is in the abdomen. The sympathetic
Yes.
nervous system is in the abdomen. Well, it's in the spine, but the parasympathetic nervous system is in the abdomen. So
Yeah.
if it's not working, if that rest and digest nervous system is not working because of tightness, they're going to be stuck in that fight or flight and they're going to wake frequently.
So, question for you, because I know that it's not always easy to get in with skilled body workers. In my experience of working with families, you know, all over,
Hmm.
like, are there things parents can do to kind of screen, like, this is definitely something I need to highly prioritize, or things like they can do themselves? Like, are there resources? Like, is there any kind of like in between, if the wait lists are long, that's the other thing. Like sometimes the wait lists I
Yeah.
know are really long, depending on where they're located and depending on how many options of like good providers there are, like experienced
Yeah. I
providers.
I get phone calls from people. So I'm in Canada. I've said that a few
Mm-hmm.
times. I get phone calls from people in the States being like, who can I go to? Do you know someone close to me? And oftentimes I don't. And there might be, either a 6-week wait list or a 6-hour drive to the closest body worker.
Yeah, it's a shame.
And my first, always, my first recommendation is to touch your baby, to touch them very softly, not to stroke and pet because that is stimulating, but to place your hands very, very gently and kind of just move the skin left, right, up, down, clockwise, counterclockwise. If you do
Mm-hmm.
that anywhere on your baby's body, on their back, on their stomach, their
Mm-hmm.
chest, close to their tongue, like their neck, the front of their neck, if you just touch, you just place your hands there, not pushing, you're not massaging, and you
Mm-hmm.
just move the skin up, slowly down, slowly to the right, slowly to what's going to happen is you're going to see this baby like melting, just
Yeah.
melting, and they will feel better, right? So it doesn't take a purely skilled practitioner to help even 10% of a baby. Parents can do it at home
I love
in the
that.
interim.
Yeah, and I love that. Like, I think sometimes giving something that you can do
Yeah,
while you look for the sort of higher level skilled
that's it.
person to see, if it helps, that's wonderful, right? Like the help is wonderful. 10% better is 10% better. But
Yes.
also, I think just knowing you have something to do that is meaningful helps with
Yes.
some of the access barrier shenanigans of trying to get in with somebody and figure it out. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like even like the DC area, we have a few really good options. But like we don't have as many as I would have thought we have.
Hmm. Yeah.
Given that I mean, that's DC, it's a big city, and like there's Baltimore, like it's a big kind of urban hub. I would have figured we had more. And maybe there are more I don't know about, but it's
I think the
like,
numbers are increasing because here's what's happening is that parents are noticing. So here's the number one thing that's happening. Parents are not taking they'll grow out of it for an answer.
yay!
Yeah. Yeah. They are doing the research. They are finding people who are on their team to help get this baby or child feeling good. And then that team is like, well, what about body work? Right. So they do the body work, either cranio or CFT or fascial stretch, something like whatever it is. And they are seeing a difference.
Hmm.
And because they know it works for their child, they then want to do it for other people.
Yeah.
And there is a huge, huge increase, especially in the States right now,
Hmm.
who want to bring this to their own community because I mean, they're like, I had to go through 6 hours, driving with a screaming baby, 6 hours one way and staying over just to get. I don't want people in my community to have to go through that, and they're doing it themselves, which I am so proud of them for doing.
Yeah.
And it's a movement, really. It's a
Yeah.
movement on making sure that babies and toddlers and children feel good in their body. They deserve to feel good in their body, and they're finally being listened to.
It's so important. I just think about like all the things that we do that aren't optimal for our bodies and the way that they're supposed to move, starting from very young, in addition to anything that comes from like the actual birth process.
Mm.
And how many cultures around the world have like different types of therapeutic touch, like really
Yeah.
integrated, and how we don't in like
We have
Western
swaddling.
culture. Yay. Good for our babies. Woohoo.
Yay. Keep them
Um,
in this.
Yes. So it's just like it's so lovely to see, I don't know, to see that shift and to hear you seeing that shift in a larger way. You like you know Austin, right? Austin Reese?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So she's local-ish to me, right? She's in Baltimore and
Yeah.
I love her. And we were having this conversation about like why are there not more options? We need more
Yeah.
trainings. We need more people so that people have more access. Because with
Yeah.
babies, it you know, man, 6 weeks to see a practitioner for me would feel long, let
You
alone
know,
like for an infant issue.
that's that's eons.
Yep,
6 weeks in infant land is eons.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So thinking about nervous system and the parent and baby together, and supporting that regulation, with body work, without body work. Have we missed anything? I know this is a huge topic. We've missed lots of things, but sort of as we kind of wrap the conversation up, are there any big points or angles we haven't touched on,
Yeah.
do you think?
You
Or
know
final
what?
words?
Sometimes if the parent gets the CST, the baby then regulates.
Ooh, parent
Yeah.
baby body work together.
Because especially when you've had a very traumatic birth, perhaps it was a birth that the outcome was absolutely opposite to what you were hoping for,
Mm-hmm.
that is now stored in your body as
Mm-hmm.
memory. That is now keeping you dysregulated, and that is now playing on repeat in your mind. I
Yes.
believe it. I know it because that's PTSD. And I've heard from a lot of people that the only time they felt that they could actually relax and that they actually felt calm was after getting their craniosacral session. And that is what changed the coming months for the baby, for
Mm-hmm.
them and their baby and it was them getting the work done. So there's this whole thing like, oh, the baby's not sleeping, or the child is not sleeping, or they've got all these issues, but we are absolutely forgetting about ourselves,
I love that.
and we need to be taken care of as well. So I'll do parent and baby sessions. I do a package, parent and baby package, and I do them both at the same time.
I love that. Because then you're really speaking to both sides of that system,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
Because maybe the baby truly does have tension that needs to be released, but also that parent might really need some help processing, what's in there.
100%. Either processing or just like pain in their body, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh
What
my
if they
goodness,
just feel
yes.
super uncomfortable? What if they had to have stitches? What if if they had a C-section, now they've got scar tissue. Like if it's weeks, months, years after birth, they've got scar tissue. Maybe that scar
Mhm.
tissue is pulling on their intestines. Maybe they can't poop properly. Maybe
Yes.
their liver isn't working properly. And so they're up at night, right? If your liver is tight because scar tissue in your abdomen, that's going to make you wake frequently or make it
Yeah.
harder for you to fall asleep. So there are also parents who are like, my baby can't wake up or my toddler can't wake up because then I don't ever get back to sleep.
Yes.
That is something in your body.
That's regulation. Yes.
It's not even just regulation, it's literally just your body's not working properly.
Yeah.
Your liver isn't processing your foods, your toxins. It's working overtime.
Hmm.
It's working overtime to work on the estrogen in your body. And that's going to throw off your circadian rhythm.
Yes. Yeah.
That's going to dysregulate you.
Yeah.
So it's both physical aspects and emotional aspects. We are not one or the other. It's always both.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you're emphasizing that.
Yeah.
And the scar tissue thing, I remember talking to a PT about something completely unrelated. It was like a running issue.
Hmm.
And he was like, yeah, scar tissue is like a chronic, think of it as a chronic injury. Like it can always kind of come back to can kind of bite you. Like, it's
Absolutely.
not like once it's healed, check, I'm never going to have issues with the scar tissue again, you know?
No,
Like,
it
so
often causes issues elsewhere.
yeah, like I had my oldest was born by C-section, so he's like, you probably always do if you feel pulling in that area, you want to check in with that scar tissue. Does it feel like it's supple? Does it feel like it's tight,
Is it
Um,
getting blood flow?
yeah, like does it because that is an area. And he's like, it's not, it just because you've been pregnant since then and it's been stretched and everything's fine. He's like, it's something that you should check in if you feel some of these things.
Hmm.
It is, he's like, think of it as a chronic injury, like healed injury, but like an injury that can flare back up just because that weighs on your radar to remember it could still cause issues. And I was like, yeah,
For the rest of your life.
that's a good point. I don't like that
And
answer, but that's a good
yeah,
point.
I don't like the answer. Thank you. You can take it back if you'd like.
I know, I want a
But
different answer, please. But also, I love that you're telling me this because that's important information to know that
it
I had
is.
never thought about in that way before.
I mean, denial is a hell of a drug, but it's not great.
Yeah.
Denying the fact that scar tissue is there will not be helpful. But the thing with scar tissue is that scar tissue is incredibly thick and it's so strong.
Hmm.
But what is directly beside it is not scar tissue. It's like healthy tissue, so hopefully healthy tissue, and it's weak. It's very
Mm.
weak, and so it is very susceptible to increased tension and micro tears itself. So when people are like, "Oh, my scar tissue isn't moving," I should move it really, really well, or I should do a fascial stretch. That's the opposite of what
Hmm.
should be done. It should be very gentle. It
Gentle.
should be
Yeah.
very easy. You can increase mobility of the scar tissue with gentle pressure
Yeah.
without then further damaging the healthy tissue, either surrounding it or what it's pulling on.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much cool knowledge about the body. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love the body, so I could probably talk about it for hours and hours and hours. And I actually do. I do talk about it for hours.
I love it though. I absolutely love it. All right, for real, wrapping up,
Yeah.
last thoughts. Any last takeaway for parents as they're thinking about that parent-baby regulation piece?
Yeah. Just trust your instincts. Trust that you know that there's something up and believe that I know that it might take a few Google rabbit holes, but you will find the right person for you to help you. You might have to go through a couple of practitioners or perhaps ask a few people, but there will be either online videos or an actual human who can do the work. Something is out there to help your baby or child. It is. Do not accept that they'll grow out of it because they'll just grow into it. So
Yeah.
treat it now, help them now so that in their adult life, they don't have sleep apnea, they don't snore and their partner hates them and now sleeps in the other room. They don't have sinus issues
Yes.
or allergies, something like that. So do it now while you're trusting yourself and everyone will benefit.
Yes. I love that. Love that. Megan, tell folks where they can find your work.
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram as a true millennial, and
Mhm.
my handle for my school is Beames CST. So that's Beames CST. And then my private practice is My Baby CST. So I've got a private practice and the school where I teach.
Awesome. Love it. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.